Nancy, let me start with you. Do you think that I'm being unfair in saying to people who are saying, "Oh, the polls are looking great," that they're really not looking that great for Kamala Harris?
Harris has consolidated a lot of that low-hanging fruit in just a week. There was a lot of young people, there were a lot of people of color, there were a lot of independent voters who were Biden 2020 voters, but holding back from supporting him. And they're coming home now, and low-hanging fruit. But we are now at a place where we are statistically tied in all of these battleground states where Joe Biden was trailing significantly just a week before. And that was his ceiling. This is her floor. So now we have a fighting chance. And that's how I'm reading this data right now.
But Lee, is it true there's a statistical time? And I keep trying to figure this stuff out, right? And you can always play with polls, et cetera. I like to refer to the average of polls. The difference here, of course, is that things are moving so quickly because Harris just sort of got into the race. So the way we can typically use an average of polls might not be as valuable as it ordinarily would. But as you look at the race right now, if you're talking to Kamala Harris, I mean, you're telling her the trends are good, but isn't it clear she's still definitively behind, or are these trends just so good for her that it's tough to even say that?
I mean, things are within the margin of error, but we've got to remember a couple things. Number one, Trump is still leading, and he has never led in the polls. He never led in the polls in 2016. He never led in the polls in 2020. He, generally speaking, outperforms polls. So I think we've got to keep that in mind. The other thing is her voter enthusiasm, for sure. People were hopeless just a week ago, 37% voter enthusiasm among Democrats, and now we're in the 80s. That is a huge, huge difference. But it's not meaning that there's going to be anybody here that's, there's no victory lap to be run, because what we're looking at is a statistical tie in Pennsylvania and Michigan. Trump is ahead in most of the swing states, and he's still ahead in most of the polls. And so she still has a long way to go. And the other thing I think we need to remember is that it's been Kamala Harris who has only been pushing her message out. She hasn't had a lot of interaction. She hasn't had a lot of pushback yet. We haven't seen her debate. We haven't really seen her do anything but deliver stump speeches, and also a lot of advertising and a lot of momentum. So I think it's going to get harder for her as the days go on.
You know, I want to put up a GOP pollster, Tony Fabrizio's memo from July 23rd, Nancy. He referred to it as the honeymoon. He basically said, expect there's going to be a honeymoon for Kamala Harris, and that's exactly what we're seeing, and that, you know, that will fade. What do you make of that?
A lot of people were eager for anyone with a D that was not 80 plus years old to be on the ticket. When I am in focus groups, that is what I was hearing. People were so eager to support a Democrat, but they were just so concerned about Biden. And so I don't think that the voters that have consolidated in the past couple of days, that sort of goes away. We still have a lot of work to do. As you and others have said, we have a lot of work to do. People have to be introduced to Kamala Harris as not just the vice president, but as her own candidate. That takes a lot of time and takes a lot of money. And I do think that there's something about Kamala Harris that is going to provoke certain response in Republicans that was harder to provoke when we were talking about Joe Biden, because he's just this old, kind of boring, white, moderate guy. But it's much easier to see how the Republican side is going to get enthusiastic about opposing Kamala Harris and what it is that she stands for in the future that she threatens in their mind to bring about. I've heard some of the most disturbing comments and open-ended statements about her. And I am quite worried about how nasty it will get.
Well, let me ask you, Lee, final question. Talking about J.D. Vance in the previous segment, do you think he plays a big role in this one way or the other for the Trump ticket?
I think, in the most part, the VP pick isn't the one that you vote for. It's something that can sort of help you decide if you're undecided. But the problem with J.D. Vance right now is that everybody's spending all their time reacting to J.D. Vance and not acting. They're not really putting forward the agenda. I think they need to put this whole story to bed and stop talking about it and move on to what the issues really are. J.D. Vance at this point is a liability, but it's been weeks of now this conversation about cat ladies, and I think it's time to move forward and talk about what the issues that are most important to voters right now, which are the economy and immigration. And let's not forget that abortion is still a very important issue, but the economy and immigration are where Trump and Vance should be spending their attention, and they're not right now. They're really reacting to this attack, and it's not helping them.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.